What if the biggest driver of profit in your practice is not your reimbursement rates, your contracts, or even your marketing, but the way you hire, the way you lead, and the way you develop your people? Today, we are talking about optimizing profit through human capital, how you turn your team from a cost center into a true investment. And I've got someone with me who lives and breathes this every day. Brandon Siegel, my very good friend and president of Wellness Works Management Partners, author of the Private Practice Survival Guide, and host of the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. If you've ever felt like you are working for your practice instead of your practice working for you, well, this episode is for you, so stay with me. Well, welcome back to Your Practice, Your Money, where clinical success meets financial freedom. I'm your host, Dr. Dimitrios Kostopoulos, and this is where your clinical success meets your financial freedom. So every week we dive into strategies, decisions, and sometimes uncomfortable conversations, but conversations that honestly help you build a practice that truly serves your patients and supports the life you want. So today's topic hits the heart, I would say, of every private practice, whether it is physical therapy or otherwise, and that is optimizing profit through human capital. Your payroll is your biggest expense, but your people are also the only part of your business that can innovate, solve problems, and create remarkable patient experiences. So the question is, are your employees just another day, another dollar, or are they truly activated, developed, and aligned to drive profit, impact, and growth? To help us unpack this, Brandon Siegel, that I'm thrilled to have you, Brandon. Welcome to Your Practice, Your Money.
Thank you so much. It's incredible to be here. I love what you're doing, and I'm just excited to kind of collaborate and connect. And obviously, things are evolving in our industry, and so right now is the time to kind of take the bull by the horns and really look at what is the role that your people play in achieving your purpose and your profit every day.
Brandon, one of the main reasons why I'm very happy that you are a guest in this podcast at this particular point in time is because private practice owners, especially in physical therapy, they are feeling the squeeze from reimbursement cuts from insurances, increased regulations, and staffing shortages. And there is a lot of burnout on both sides, both on the owner side and the employee side. So people are asking, how do I build a team that can actually drive profit instead of draining me? So what say you, Brandon?
Well, the first thing I think before you even look at the profit is you have to identify what fills your people's bucket. And then you have to recognize how to monetize it. And that could be your physical therapist. That could be your medical biller. That could be your marketing representative. That could be anyone in your organization. See, we always get stuck in this viewpoint that the only way we can make money is through physical therapy. And I challenge you, and I say it in this way, shift it on its side. What are things that everyone loves to do in your organization? And what are ways they can generate revenue doing it? And whether that's health and wellness, whether that's hiring the nutritionist that also operates as your scheduler or whatnot. It's figuring out different ways for people to tap into an ecosystem that gets them up every day. I hear this often. I hear, hey, Brandon, my employees are burning out. My employees are burning out. My employees are burning out. And I'm like, your employees are burning out because there's something else they'd rather do. That's the reality. So the only reason why we burn out is because there is somewhere else or something else we'd rather do. And it's so interesting because I literally was speaking with someone recently, and he was really honest with me. And he said, my wife would do nothing if she had it her way. That's what he said, because he led with, she hates her job and she's burning out. And I said, so what would she do? And he said, honestly, she'd do nothing. I said, really? He's like, yeah, she'd stay at home. She'd read. Well, there's nothing I can do with that. I have no moldable clay there. And so the first thing you have to do is get the root cause of what gets your people up every day.
Mentioning that, it's a parallel, I would say, to what we say that, okay, you do diagnostics in your practice to get the root cause of the problem of your patient before you actually decide on how you're going to handle it. So there's a very nice parallel there. Now, I want to define some words. So when we say human capital in private practice, what do we really mean? What does human capital actually means?
In my terms, human capital is essentially, we're in the people business. If I remove people from your organization, how are you generating revenue? And so the idea of human capital is, how do we optimize the way that people impact your purpose, your potential, and your profit? And so I think we often see people as a vehicle of clinical outcomes, but we don't recognize or correlate how they align with our profit. Like, how do we differentiate each person's role, purpose, and potential to profit? And I think we leave a lot of money on the table because we don't always get to the sphere of excellence of what someone actually achieves for you or can achieve for you, and how we can validate the financial viability of their performance.
So if you had to put your finger, let's say, what would you say is the most common mistake that private practice owners make when it comes to their employees and profitability, the thought of it or the practical application of it?
So, two things. One is they don't have a business algorithm, and their business algorithm is not transparent to their team. So their people don't understand the equation in which it creates an outcome, not just be on behalf of the organization, but themselves. And so when we create that business algorithm, and that's one of the things actually at my workshop, I'm really going to help you kind of identify what's the percentage of profit for each person. And when someone comes to you and they want to make more and they want more earning potential, they want to have better work-life balance or whatnot, what are the ways that we can create algorithmic changes, data-driven, that drive enough revenue to equal the affordability to deliver what they want? So I might not be able to get that gentleman's wife to work from home or to do nothing, so to speak, but I can help your employees identify ways that they can bring value for their reality to change. Now, the other thing that I recommend, and this is a side note, but it does correlate, is we get stuck in this medical model. And this medical model, in my opinion, it can be a hole, a sinkhole, whatever you want to call it. And the deeper we get, the farther we are from the light of seeing what other things are out there. And so I'm a big believer in this thing that I call a 3 tax ID model. And the 3 tax ID model is designed where I've got my medical model, I have my concierge model, and I have my MSO. And by separating these 3 tax IDs, I'm able to unlock revenue and not get stuck because of Medicare or work comp or liability insurance. And suddenly now I'm generating revenue in such a diverse way that transparently people could do things that they never thought were possible on behalf of patients. And so for me, it's really about, how do we create solutions to get people excited so that what drives them day in and day out is more than just got my 30-minute session done, I got my 16 visits done, and like, because there's only so long you can do this. There's only so long you can run in place. And so as we are able to get creative and outside of the box with our 3-tax ID model and creating a business algorithm that brings the transparency so that your team is able to change their trajectory, we're able to build entrepreneurs that are generating not just revenue on behalf of your organization, but revenue on behalf of their own goals.
You are talking about transparency, right? And of course, if you are creating this algorithm has to be known to people. You have to get buy-in from your people so that they can go for it, they can apply. How somebody makes that shift, like from the non-Brandon's model to the Brandon's model? How would this shift take place?
So step one is you have to identify your current scene. You have to understand where you're at. Step two is actually identifying where you want to go and really how are we bringing this to the table. Normally that could be a 6-month process. And then step three is we get our stakeholders involved. We get our leadership. We get people that really buy in to troubleshoot and help game plan. And so we actually create a whole roadmap with your leadership team. And then from there, we have a meeting where we get everyone excited. And that meeting is where leadership has said, we have been tasked with an opportunity to unlock greater profit for greater reward. And the optimizing the way that you change your own personal goals, professional goals, and truly our purpose can be hit on a different level. The idea that we can't give incredible patient care and make great money, that's a lie out there. You can give incredible care and make great money. And so once they start to think differently and they're like, what if we could tap into the medical model? And what if we could treat above and beyond? What if preventative care was actually sustainable in our practice? And what if your approach was able to change daily based on different patient censuses and different ways for you to increase your knowledge and the ingredients that you have to tap into why you do what you do? And so whether you want to be a clinical specialist, whether you want to be a leader, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, in which we offer entrepreneur opportunities, whether you want to be a mentor, a trainer, an educator, or even just you want to unlock a new skill in marketing, we've got the resources now to help you learn, thrive, and grow while paving a way for each person to have different paths. And that's the other big thing that I really, really, really want to kind of impress upon everyone is that my path might not be the right path for you. And that's why I want to give you choices. When people have choices, they take responsibility. When we enforce what they need, that's when they back off. That's when they're stuck. It's like, nope, you're going to do it this way. You've got to have 16 patients, blah, 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 blah. No. Why can't I create 5 roads and let each employee pick which road works for them and give them an opportunity where with 3 months notice, they can shift roads at any point so that they never feel stuck and they always feel self-determined to grow and find their path within your organization.
So you get in communication, you provide choices, you indoctrinate people on the algorithm and everything else. People in a self-determined fashion, they make a choice. So there is an agreement between leadership and everybody else in the organization. And then that's how you roll it. But no matter what, there will be at some point people that, let's say, leave the organization because they want to relocate, retire, or a very small minority of people, they may also disagree with all this or whatever. Somebody leaves the organization, right? Eventually, how do you go about hiring new people? Is there something to look at? Is there a method? Is there some advice that you can provide here?
So first of all, for you to know, I have over 50 therapists in one of my organization. We average over 8 years of employment retention. We have many that have been with us for 20. I believe the root cause of that is I create a magnet that attracts people that I know fit my organization, and I create the opposite, which repel. And so a lot of people want to create what I call is like, let's attract all, or let's tell them what they want to hear. And so we spend so much time advertising, like, if you want this and if you want that, and then we basically overpromise and we underdeliver. I underpromise and I overdeliver. But in my recruitment approach, I create a really clean identity. Who am I? Who's right for me? Who's not? And I really identify, I want 10% of people, and the 10% I want is often not looking for work. And so then I create the relationships. So what I do is I become the place where people want to work. And 365 days a year, I'm recruiting through my voice, through my education, through my team, through putting on workshops, through all different ways where it's not transactional, it's transformational. And in that interview process, part of our journey is, before I even start, I want to understand the candidate profile. So we want to understand who, what, why, where, when. What are they looking for? Where are they going to be? I say, name your 10-year trajectory. What does that look like? I drive questions in their application of financially. Let's map out what your compensation will be for the next 10 years in your reality. From that, I say, what would drive you to leave our organization? What would drive you to stay? I get all of these factors and I build their candidate profile. And so as we go through this journey, we create the employee roadmap together for them so that they're doing observations. We do about, give or take, a 3 to 5 week interview process. I know some of you can't wait for that long, but we're always hiring for growth with the idea that just because we might not have a role now, you're in the wings for when we are ready.
Vast majority of people, they hire last minute emergency. Somebody, I got a 2 week notice, or somebody hasn't showed up to work for 3 days. Let's figure out what's going on. No, definitely KPIs. So how tell us a little bit about that. How do you use KPIs in
Yeah, so
right?
I think key performance indicators, first and foremost, they allow our organization to identify progress. That's the whole idea of it, is where are we progressing, where are we not? You need connection, you need purpose, and you need progress. We as an organization use KPIs to track where we are progressing and where we are not. So we start on a high level. Where as an organization are we progressing? So actually, January 2026 marked our highest ever statistics as a company. We literally hit our highest ever. And so today I wrote this email to all of my team and I said, I want to highlight that we as an organization just hit our highest ever. I want you to see the progress as an organization. And I wrote this whole email and everyone came back to me and they said, I can't tell you how much it means to me to get this email because it gives me hope for the future, because I see that you're driving progress on behalf of all of us. So that's first, that KPI is an opportunity for us to find where are we progressing and where we are not. Where we are not progressing, it's really important that we create feedback. And so I'm a big believer in doing a 360-degree feedback where we go to all the different people and say, hey, this isn't looking so good. What do you think? And then we create strategic action. One of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they do analysis. They get paralysis by analysis. They just keep analyzing and they don't understand how to use KPIs. So when we're using KPIs, the concept is this KPI is either validating that we're doing something right, we're either monitoring to see if we have to make something different, or we are actually taking action to change the trajectory of something within our organization.
That's really amazing. And it allows people to have predictability and see their own. Most people, I guess, they like to see that they are improving in some area of life, right? So having some KPI and have a challenge in front of you and overcoming that barrier, overcoming that challenge, that creates also some happiness, right?
100%. And the other thing is this, when someone's not underperforming in a KPI, it actually puts them into the prefrontal cortex versus fight or flight when I start that conversation by identifying what KPIs they are doing well. So, hey, I see that you're getting the highest customer scores in terms of your care treatment of anyone. I know that you're productivity is not where we have designed it. Let's come up with some ways to bring balance to that, but I don't want to lose sight that this is one area you're doing well. Sometimes we only focus on where people need improvement and they get into fight or flight. And so I always want to start with how do we get them into that co-creating mode, that prefrontal cortex of how can we, what is the way? And it's interesting because we sent out an email. One of my managers sent out an email and it basically said, hey, we need some structure to the way that we're doing something. And one employee literally took it as though we were calling her out. She's like, I need a meeting right away. And literally, I'm like, what makes you think that you're doing a bad job? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, so let's focus on where you're doing good. I said, it was not intended for you. It was truly a group email. But what sometimes happens is people's insecurities or the things that maybe they're not doing as well, the mistakes they are making, come to the surface whenever something can be portrayed as critiquing and they make it their own. They must be talking about me because they're afraid. What do they know? Are they upset at me? And it's very interesting because I even noticed in Indeed that this employee, out of the blue, that day that she got that, she put her resume up in some way. And I'm like, something's not going right. If some email is triggering that, that's a sign that maybe she is making mistakes. Maybe there's something I don't know, because for her to get that defensive when it wasn't even intended for her, it's a bold statement, you know?
I like the fact that you gave like a practical example of a case. I appreciate that. And I want a little rapid fire segment with you. I'm going to give you a scenario and then just give us like the place that you would look first or a major move, a change, a what would you do type of thing. Okay.
Okay.
One of the very, very common scenarios in physical therapy is that the practice has lots of volume of patients, but the profit margins are very thin. They feel that they are overstaffed, but they're also afraid to cut down personnel because if they cut down, how they're going to serve their patients, they're afraid the volume will go down, and therefore, what are they going to do? Where would you look first in a practice like this? What would be one key move for the owner of the practice?
So I typically divide up two main categories of analysis in this circumstance. One is called the total people expense. Total people expense is anything connected to employees. That's your wages, your benefits, your taxes. I even throw the EMR because that goes up and down with the employee, all these different factors. And I want to see if our total people expense, including admin and therapists, is above or below 60% of the total revenue. That's the starting KPI for me. So if it's above 60%, then I have to do more digging. Okay. The second KPI I look at is the total facility expense and the revenue percentage it takes. So if more than 10% of your expenses connected to total facility expense take from revenue, we've got ourselves a problem. And the goal is 4%. So my goal is that my total people expense and my total facility expense together only take 70% of the revenue. And so from there, then I do deeper dives, but that's the starting point. The next is forecasting. If I have capacity of therapists, my next question is, how do I fill the potential revenue?
As I'm listening to you, I'm getting more and more excited about your participation and presentations at our Leadership Academy. So that would be really awesome. So let's say that you have a private practice, one clinician that is absolutely a rock star, that clinician is driving most of the revenue, and the rest of the team, they are okay, but not great, not that excited about the whole process. What would be a first step, let's say, to lift up the rest of the team and avoid eventual burnout or overworking of that single staff member that is doing most of the work?
The first thing I need to do is I have to evaluate the reality of all the employees and their performance. Do they think they're doing a good job? What do they think is fair and reasonable production? And what is their own goals? And I always say, what is our minimum viable production versus our minimum scheduled production? And are we setting people up for success? I always use the analogy of we've got racehorses and we've got pasture horses. If we have one racehorse and an entire team of pasture horses, the culture is wrong. Something's not working. And so we have to identify each therapist's motor, I believe, in individual targets. So rather than everyone be at a 16 patient max per day, really identify that everyone has a goal so that when that other person is producing, let's say 10, they don't feel less than 16. They feel that's the target that they have set for themselves.
Awesome. How about all staff members producing about the same, but you have a single staff member who makes kind of slight comments against others, gossiping behind their back. This staff member does this in such an intensive fashion that a couple of the other staff members call out sick. How do you handle that type of thing? If that staff member who is kind of toxic, he or she is still productive.
I call that Tabasco sauce in my water system. That's my analogy. So my analogy is like, if right now my son poured Tabasco sauce in my water system, I wouldn't know today, I wouldn't know tomorrow, and a month from now, it'd start tasting sour. And often, if I don't catch it early enough, I have to flush the entire water system. So right off the bat, I actually don't focus on the Tabasco sauce. I focus on everyone else. I want to see if I can preserve the therapist that I do have before I remove the Tabasco sauce. That Tabasco sauce is either going to get a performance improvement plan or they're going to get the transition talk from me. And the transition talk is, it's become apparent that this is no longer where you want to be. Let's come up with your transition. I'll help you find another job. I've tried all I can, but it's clear that this isn't meeting your needs, wants, and desires long term. And I'd rather end on a positive note. So let's just be real with each other. But I won't have that until I've preserved everyone else.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So, what could be a few action steps that listeners, private practice owners who are listening to the show right now could take as initial steps of improvement?
So the first action step I recommend is to have meetings with each therapist, each employee, and find out and name what something they're proud of, something that they feel they need to work on, and their needs, wants, and desires for 2026, and say, but I also want you to name 2027. If every single person has a target that they are bought into, in agreement with for both this year and next year, you're creating a longer roadmap. Sometimes our roadmaps aren't long enough. And one thing that I've recognized is that employees that don't know where they're going often get lost. And so we want to give them a purpose. We want to give them a picture. We want to give them a target. And by giving that target, they're going to feel like they're progressing just by getting closer to it. Take your total people expense and see how much of that expense is taking up revenue. And if it's above 60%, then I want you to break down the differential between what's the total people expense of therapist to revenue versus the total people expense of administrative to revenue. Because I'm a really big believer that if your administrative staff are not standalone revenue generators too, truly we should have one full-time administrative person to 6 to 10 full-time therapists. That is the ratio. And with AI and innovation and technology, there's everything. But again, I believe we can unlock revenue from our administrative team if we're smart. So start to do that. And so my third thing I'll just leave you with is this. Find out every skill set that your team offers that goes above and beyond what they already utilize in their job functions. See what talent they have.
Oh my goodness. And I love the fact that some of what you say sounds a bit uncomfortable. But for those who want to go a bit deeper into this, where should they go? Where can they get data?
wellnessworksmp.com. Literally, that's the easiest thing. And my email address is brandon@wellnessworks, M for management, P for partners.com. I'm here for each and every one of you, and I want you to thrive.
That's fantastic, and thank you. And let me wrap up a couple of things here. Our people are pretty much the only part of the practice that can create value on their own. They are building the relationships, they deliver the outcomes. You help them to identify new resources to multiply their energy and create more for the organization. You hire intentionally, you give them clear roles, responsibilities, and meaningful KPIs, as we discussed. And you build systems, algorithms, predictable things that they can look for, and they can create a path for their own development, improvement, ascend in life parallel to yours, so you can work together as a team.
Unlock the ability for your employees to have control. It is when they're the effect that they disconnect from your organization's purpose. And so let them control their financial earning, let them control their purpose, let them control how they move within your organization within a structured environment that is a win-win at the co-create level.
Thank you, Brandon. Well, my friends, if you found value in this conversation with Brandon, follow or subscribe to Your Practice, Your Money. Listen to us at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen. Leave us a rating and a brief review. Now, if you leave a review, this helps more practice owners discover the show. And please share this episode with one of your colleagues who needs to hear that human capital is the real lever for profit. Brandon, thank you again for sharing your wisdom and your passion. I'm looking forward to see you later this month.
Thank you.
All right. And to all of you listening, see you next week with a very, very interesting podcast episode. Until then, keep building clinical success and financial freedom. Take care.